So now we're going to create our own server. And this concept that here's TCP and here's HTTP, and HTTP is running on top of TCP is really important. And so to create an HTTP server, right, a server which responds to HTTP requests, we actually create a TCP server that will handle requests that come in which are formatted in a certain way. Because when a request comes in, that request is just text, right? And so if the text is formatted in a certain way, if it's adhering to the hypertext transfer protocol, HTTP, and a protocol is a rule of communication, rules of communication, that's what a protocol is. So if the text that comes into the TCP server adheres to the hypertext transfer protocol, those rules, then our server will be able to process that text. And so we're just going to learn the basics, the rudimentary stuff about how do we build our own server. If we go and we look at godoc.org, there is a net package which allows us to do things on the network, right? Like create these types of servers and do things on the TCP network. We could also go net HTTP, and it's no coincidence that we have the net package and then the HTTP package on top of that. So all of the server stuff will have been written for us, and we could use that. It's part of the standard library, and it's written by professional, hardcore, amazing black belt coders, so it's really good, right? But I want us to understand a little bit about what's going on behind the scenes so that you're educated and you understand the hypertext transfer protocol, requests coming into the server from the client, request comes into the server, server responds. That request is formatted in a certain way. How is all that text that comes in formatted? That text is formatted according to the hypertext transfer protocol, right? To adhere to those standards. Where are those standards written? They're in RFC 7230. What is RFC 7230? RFC stands for Request for Comment, and it's the document that's put out by the IETF, the Internet Engineering Task Force, to sort of say, hey, these are the standards we'll adhere to when we do HTTP stuff, hypertext transfer protocol stuff. So let's create our first TCP server. And I've got that code written right here just for time's sake. And in the net package that we just saw at godoc.org, right, there's a function listen. Listen asks for two strings. One is going to be, what kind of a network do you want to listen on? TCP network. What port do you want to listen on, right? I'm listening on port 8080. Listen will give back to us a listener and an error, right? So we could say, well, what's a listener? So we could go look at that. A listener is an interface that has these three methods. So the listener we get back will have those three methods. This tells us a pretty big hint. We're going to have to close our listener when we finish our program. This tells us we can accept. When we're listening, we can accept and get back a connection and an error. So this is what we do with that, right? We do net listen, gives us a listener and an error. We defer the close of the listener. And then we come down here and we loop forever. And the first thing we do in our loop is if somebody calls in, we accept, right? So if somebody is like making a call, hey, accept, that gives us a connection. A connection, what is a connection? A connection has both the read and write types. So this is the method. It's a really special method in Go programming. This is the reader and the writer. So if we go and we look at like I/O, here's the reader. And anything that has read, slice of bytes, and error, right? Read, slice of bytes, and error. Anything with that signature implements type reader, which is the reader interface, right? And we'll see polymorphism in action here pretty soon. And anything that has write, slice of bytes, and error, write, slice of bytes, and error, implements the type writer interface, typewriter, right? And so that's what a connection is. And that makes sense, because if you have a connection, hello, you can write to it, I just spoke to it, or I could listen to it, So you could read from a connection, you could write to a connection. So we have li accept, we get our connection, and then we IO write string, or print line, fprint line, or fprint, because write string, right, asks for a writer and a string, right? So it will write a string to a writer. Well, since connection is a writer, implements the write interface, right? The write interface, the writer interface, the writer interface implements the writer interface. We could pass that connection there. We could pass that connection here because fprint line wants a writer. Fprintf wants a writer, right? So we could write all that stuff back to our connection, close our connection, go back to listening, and be ready to accept another one. So let's see this in action. If you're on a Mac, you already have Telnet installed. And the instructions, by the way, are right here. And if you're on Windows, you need to turn Telnet on. So right-click your start, go to Programs and Features, and then go to Turn Windows Features On, and then come down here and click Telnet. OK. And then start your command prompt on Windows. So there's my command prompt. And then here's my shell. Close that one. I don't need another one. I was just testing everything out before I ran. I don't have a shell open. I have a command prompt open. Let me open my shell. So there's my get shell. And navigate to Document, go Workspace, Source, GitHub, goes to 11, Golang Web Dev. And we are in 0:15:01, go run main. All right, so I just started my program and it's saying, are you sure you want to allow this? Yes, allow it. And then I could come over here and I could call in telnet localhost. Telnet is a little program which works on the TCP layer, and 8080. And hello from TCP server. How's your day? Well, I hope. Connection to host lost. And if I turn this off, Control-C, and then try to connect again, it'll say I can't find that connection because I've turned my program off. So that's our first little TCP connection. And we're going to build on this to build our own server to handle requests that come in. And a request is just going to be a bunch of text. And that request that comes in, the text will be formatted to adhere to RFC 7230, the Hypertext Transfer Protocol.